Hey everyone, welcome to the latest edition of the West Coast Best Coast Football Show here. Your take inside the West Coast football teams, formerly of the Pac-12. We're going to kind of, narrow it down to, and also focus on Boise State here because Boise State's a story in its own right. But wanted to focus on the 12 former Pac-12 teams. An interesting last week. We headed into week 7 here. A lot of massive games on the slate, and this is going to be a very interesting game. A very interesting week, rather, in terms of some of these teams having big, high-profile matchups. Obviously, that Ohio State-Oregon game is massive. 2 versus 3, national television, NBC, like a massive, massive showcase for the Big Ten and also for Oregon West Coast football, and obviously welcoming in the vaunted Ohio State Buckeyes. But first off, in terms of rankings, USC drops all the way out. And they are now 26th, first receiving votes after their loss at the last second to Minnesota, which is really an inexcusable loss. And apparently there was some officiating controversy in that game with Lincoln Riley saying that the Big Ten called them about, hey, there wasn't inconclusive evidence to overturn the initial call of the game-winning touchdown on the 4th and goal sneak. But USC's out of the rankings. Utah actually moves up 2 spots despite not playing a game. They're up to 16. They got an interesting Friday night game that's very interesting with early with Big 12 title implications, and they're facing an Arizona State team. We'll get to that game momentarily here. And then Oregon, after dropping from where they were, they go all the way back up to number 3, move up 6 spots. They beat Michigan State on a Friday night. They get that extra day to prepare. They get to welcome in Ohio State. Really one of the defining games of this season. Not just in the Big Ten, but nationally. So Oregon up to where they were initially to start the season, which is very interesting in their own right. All right, let's run through the 12-pack here and run through the teams, how I rank these. I still have to stick with UCLA at 12. They just have not been good, and this team just does not look really well coached at all. I'm starting to venture towards there might be a one-and-done season here for Deshaun Foster, and it's not his fault. He was thrust into a position that really he wasn't ready for. They wanted to keep the recruiting class, and they wanted to prevent a bunch of transfers, and he was on staff. He was beloved, but he's not a head coach. He's not. And it's just not worked out for UCLA. Eric Bieniemy looks like it. Like, you're starting to see why Eric Bieniemy never got an NFL head coaching job. His offenses have not been good when he ran it in Washington with the Commanders last year, and now at UCLA. This is one of the worst teams. This is one of the worst teams in the Power 4. I'm sorry. This is one of the worst teams in the Power 4. I want to believe that UCLA can do stuff because I'm nearby the campus and in Los Angeles, and I know how proud this program is. Even if they didn't really enjoy the Chip Kelly era, they were winning lots of games in the last couple years. So to see them where they've sunk to, due to the unfortunate circumstances of the late departure of Chip Kelly, having to find a head coach late in the process, and here you are, UCLA. It's not going to get any better for them. They play Minnesota. Minnesota's a middle-of-the-road team. I just don't think that's going to go very well for UCLA. Stanford has kind of fallen since that big win on the road against Syracuse. They're my number 11 team. Just not a whole, like I said, I like Troy Taylor, but it's just, in terms of talent, they're just not going to measure up to some of the top-tier teams in their conference, and you've seen that against a team like Virginia Tech. They lose at home. They lost to Clemson. It's not going to be pretty for Stanford this year. I dropped Cal all the way to 10, partly because that loss to Florida State's is going to continue to look worse and worse and worse. They only scored 9 points in it, and then blowing that game to Miami is just inexcusable. You can't do that. I mean, targeting play or not, it's just I really wanted to believe in this team, but it's just. You can't lose that game in that high profile of a spot. It's a bad loss. Your second loss of the season. They play an undefeated Pitt team all the way in Pittsburgh. I don't think that game's going to go very well for them either. Pitt's been playing really good football under Pat Narduzzi. So I got Cal at 10. I got Oregon State at 9. Yes, it's kind of a records thing, but also Oregon State's playing some good football, man. Their defense is, yeah, they had the slugfest where they gave up 31 points in a double overtime game against Colorado State, but they're winning games. They're running the ball really well. And, hey, don't look now. Oregon State plays at Nevada this week, they could be 5-1. And their one loss is to the third best team in the country, who everybody's losing to. So don't look now. Oregon State, I got them at 9. I got Arizona State at 8. Don't look now. They're 4-1. They play Utah this week. They play Utah later tonight, which is insane. Sam Levitt's been great. I love Kenny Dillingham and that youthful energy. Cam Scadaboo's incredibly underrated as a running back, both rushing and receiving. So yeah, I got the Sun Devils at 8. And man, hey, if they win this game against Utah and weird shit happens in, you know, these after dark games, like Arizona State, man, like they're ahead of schedule, man. Like they've already won more games than they did last year, which is saying something. So I got the Sun Devils at 8. I had Arizona at 7. I dropped them a little bit lower because looking at some of these other teams that I have ahead of them, I just feel like they're better as of right now because based off the standard that they got killed by Kansas State, that loss to Texas Tech is not good considering they had a chance to win that game. So I drop Arizona here. I mean, we'll see how Arizona responds. They play BYU. And this is a chance to really assert themselves a little bit more. But I dropped them a little bit lower because that Kansas State loss is bad. Like, they weren't even competitive in that game. So, and then losing the game to Texas Tech, even though Texas Tech has kind of righted the ship a little bit, still is not a great loss to drop that game at home in front of your home crowd. I have Washington at 6. This team should be 6-0. They blew the game at the end against Washington State where they ran that stupid option play at the end. And then they had a bunch of turnovers on down to missed field goals against Rutgers. Like, this team could be 6-0. Like, Jedd Fisch is doing a really decent job. Will Rogers quietly having a really good season. And they go to Iowa in the big noon game. Like, they've got a high-profile opportunity this week to really make a statement. I mean, the two losses, obviously, yeah, losing to Washington State, you lose your rivalry game, and the circumstances the way that. But yeah, these are close losses that they've had. So, I got to stick with Washington at 6. I put Washington State ahead of them because of the head-to-head. Yes, I understand that they did get destroyed by Boise State, and they came off a bye. I have to stick them ahead, surely on the fact that they beat Washington head-to-head, even though Washington should have probably won that game. But I just got to go on merit there. Washington State also, I love what John Mateer is doing. We'll see what the Cougs do this weekend. They're at Fresno State, so that'll be interesting. Coming off the bye, going on the road to play Fresno State. So that's, I mean, you know, really like Pac-12 on Mountain West, so that'll be interesting. I got Colorado at 4, man. And listen, I think we all got to start bracing ourselves for the possibility that Colorado might be very good. They've got a huge opportunity against Kansas State this week to really make a statement early on in the Big 12 season that they are for real. If they win this game, brace yourself for all the Deion propaganda and everything. And I'm going to be obnoxious with it, but I got to give credit where credit is due. Shedeur Sanders, Travis Hunter, and this whole team has really rallied around each other. Since that Nebraska loss, they've come together. They've really, like, I mean, yeah, they had the lucky situation at the end against Baylor, but they dominated the game against Colorado State, and then they went to UCF in a game where they were a 2-touchdown underdog, went on the road, and absolutely annihilated a pretty solid UCF team with some talented football players. So I got Colorado at 4, and if they keep winning, man, like, they're going to climb higher because I need to see them do what they need to do against Kansas State before I put them ahead of my other 3 teams. I've got Utah at 3, coming off of the bye. Actually, you know, Stan, I'm actually going to make it on the fly. I wrote this down in my I actually have USC at 3. I wrote this down initially, and I had to think through it again. I actually have USC at 3. Losing to Minnesota is really inexcusable. But the reality of the situation, I mean, Lincoln Riley can say it until he's blue in the face, and he might be right. They're a couple plays from being 5-0, but they're not. They blew the game against Michigan. They blew the game against Minnesota. And, you know, you've got 2 losses. Your season's, like, you know, kind of hanging by a thread. You got Penn State coming in this week. So, yeah, on second blush after writing this down prior to doing this recording, I've got USC at 3 instead of 2, and I moved Utah up to 2 because it looks like they're going to get Cam Rising back. They get the game against Arizona State. The one loss is at home to a decent Arizona team. I really like this team. I like the way they're coached. Cam Rising back in the lineup is a big, big deal because this could honestly mean big things for Utah and potentially, guiding them back to potentially winning another conference championship and winning, the Pac-12 and the Big 12 championship. So we'll see how that goes. And then Oregon's won. They're the only undefeated team out of the former Pac-12 left. They got the big game against Ohio State. This is going to be a big statement opportunity for Dan Lanning in a high-profile game again. Really first, massive Big Ten test that they've ever had. And you welcome in the vaunted, really one of the kings of this conference in the Big Ten in the Ohio State Buckeyes. Obviously, Michigan's kind of controlled the league recently, but this is Ohio State's really been in the top tier of the Big Ten for a long, long time. So this is a big opportunity for Oregon. All right, let's run through these games real quick. Utah at Arizona State. I got the Utes. Yes, this will be tricky going to Tempe on a Friday night. But yeah, I got Utah. Cam Rising's back. I'd expect him to play really well. Brant Keithy to have a nice game. Mekhi Bernard to have a nice game. Arizona State's been a nice story. But let's be fair. They haven't played a team like Utah yet. So could be interesting, but I think Utah should win the game. Washington at Iowa. This will be very interesting. Iowa coming off getting just, smacked by Ohio State. But who isn't getting killed by Ohio State? So this will be interesting. It's the big noon game, big opportunity for Washington, who, as I acknowledged, hey, they've missed some opportunities and they could easily be 6-0 right now, but they're not. Yeah, this is gonna be a tough test. Going with the 9 a.m. body clock, which worries me a little bit. But if Washington's able to score and their defense plays okay, I just don't know if Iowa's going to score a lot of points in this game. So I'll take Washington on the road to pull the upset here and beat the Hawkeyes in the big noon window. And this would be a big, big win for Jedd Fisch early on in his tenure in Washington. But yeah, I got the Huskies here to win this game. Then you get Penn State and USC. USC, this could have been a ranked-on-ranked matchup, but USC loses, drops all the way out of the top 25. So this is now the big CBS game. Penn State, the number 4 team in the country, really their first, monster test of this season, going to USC. Listen, Penn State has been fine for a top-tier team, but like I said, they haven't really been tested. So it's going to be interesting to see how USC plays, because like I said, they've really beaten themselves with some mistakes, and like I said, they lost at the near the end against Minnesota, and they lost near the end against Michigan. They could easily be 5-0 right now. They really could. So yeah, I'm going to take the Trojans here. I'm going to take the Trojans to upset Penn State. I really like what I've seen from Miller Moss. It's going to be interesting to see how Penn State's defense is, blocked by USC, and how Lincoln Riley tries to scheme up this game, because Penn State's defense under Tom Allen's been really good. But yeah, I'll take USC here. This just feels like, Penn State always seems like under James Franklin that they get one of those, head scratch. I'm not going to say head scratch. This wouldn't be a head scratching loss, but it feels like they're due to kind of get clipped here. And this feels like a big opportunity. And USC season's really, this is their season right here, because they've already got 2 losses. So if you beat Penn State, maybe you have a small hope in hell of maybe, trying to get into the Big Ten, get to the top tier of the Big Ten, and potentially, win, potentially try to get to the college football playoff. It looks slim, but I think USC wins this game. Stanford at Notre Dame, I like Troy Taylor as a coach. It's just they're not going to get the talent that they need. Notre Dame seems to have righted the ship ever since that Northern Illinois loss. Riley Leonard's playing really well. I don't expect this to be close. I think Notre Dame rolls over Stanford. Arizona at BYU. This is going to be a very interesting game. BYU, shockingly, all the way up in the middle of the top 25. I think they're 14 now. Arizona coming off the bad loss to Texas Tech. Arizona going on the road to Provo. A tough place to play. I really like what Kalani Sitake's doing. I'll take Arizona here. It just seems like every time we doubt the Wildcats, they go on the road to Utah. Nah, they're not going to do it. I think they're going to go to the state of Utah for the second time this year and win a game. Arizona needs this if they want to be taken seriously in the Big 12 for the rest of the season. So I'll take the Wildcats to pull this one off. Washington State goes to Fresno State. The reality here, I think Washington State with a week off, I think they're going to be able to right the ship. Fresno State's not very good. They're kind of middle of the road. So I would expect John Mateer to have a nice game, the receivers to have a nice game, and Jake Dicker to have a plan. And the Cougs get back on the winning track here. I'm going to leave Ohio State, Oregon for the end because that's the game that everybody wants to talk about. So let's go Oregon State, Nevada. Nevada's not very good. This is not a very good team. I tend to think Oregon State in the running game is going to be able to go up to Reno and pull off the win here. And Trent Brave, don't look now, they would be 5-1 if they won this game. So that's a big spot. Minnesota, UCLA. I've already talked about how I feel about UCLA. I think UCLA is one of the worst teams in the Power Four right now. They're just not very well coached. And like I said, I don't really put this on Deshaun Foster. He's been thrust into a position that he shouldn't be. In a lot of ways, I kind of look at this almost like Freddie Kitchens with the Cleveland Browns. He may be a likable guy, football guy, seems like he knows what he's doing, but it's just like you could see from that press conference at Big Ten Media Day, the we're in LA, just how awkward that was and how uncomfortable it was. It's just this guy is not fit to be a head coach. And I like the way he played as a player. He's beloved on that staff. It's just, this is not working. It's very clear that this is not working. Minnesota, obviously they've been playing really hard. PJ Fleck is as energetic and hyped up as there's going to be. So it'll be a very interesting environment there at the Rose Bowl. But I would expect Minnesota to win this game. Kansas State at Colorado. Man, I really don't know how I feel about this game because it's a late kick in Boulder. I think it's an 8 local kick. Colorado's had a week off. Kansas State, this is a big road test for them. They obviously kind of almost got clipped by Tulane earlier in the season. I can't believe I'm going to say this. I got Colorado winning this game, and I got Colorado going to 5-1. Oh boy, if Colorado wins this game, like I said, brace yourselves, everybody, because all the Deion propaganda that we saw when they started 3-0 last year, it's going to come back. And if you're Kansas State, I really like Chris Kleiman. I really like this team, but it just feels like something's going on with Colorado, especially since that Baylor game. And really, even with the Colorado State game, I thought they would get clipped there, and they blew them out there. I think this is a big opportunity for Colorado to really stake their claim and be taken seriously. So I would take the Buffs there. Boise State and Hawaii. Boise State's going to win. It doesn't really matter about that. It matters how many yards and how many touchdowns is Ashton Jeanty going to run for. And granted, this game's going to be on like so late. No, if you're going to have to be a true sicko to watch this game. But you should stay up and watch it for Ashton Jeanty, who I think should be the Heisman Trophy winner. Like, the guy's got 1,000 yards and 16 touchdowns in 5 games. Like, come on. Like, that's unheard of. So, Boise State's going to win. It's like over under 175 yards for Ashton Jeanty at this point. Like, I mean, I think he's averaging like 200 yards a game at this point, but I would set it at 175, and you know what? I'd be inclined to take the over. This is probably not going to be pretty. Boise State should win comfortably. And then we get to the big one, Ohio State at Oregon. Both these teams have been pretty impressive. Oregon's kind of seemed to figure it out since the sluggish first 2 games. It's at Autzen. The environment's going to be insane. I'm hyped up to watch it. I love both these programs. Listen, man, I've been really impressed with the Chip Kelly run offense, because that's another storyline that it's kind of flown under the radar. Chip Kelly going back to Oregon, kind of flown under the radar. A lot of people aren't really, pointing that out, but I just think that, with this Will Howard-led offense, Jeremiah Smith has just played beyond his years. The running game's been insane. Will Howard's not made very many mistakes. I just get this feeling that Ohio State's going to find a way to pull this out and get the win on the road and, go to and get and stay undefeated. And Oregon, to be honest with you, whoever loses this game is not really, damaged significantly. That being said, it's going to suck for one of these teams, because if Indiana continues to win, that's going to be a problem for one of these teams, whoever loses this game. That being said, Indiana, I know for sure gets Ohio State. I'm not sure if they get Oregon this year, but yeah, I take Ohio State to win this game. This is going to be a fun game to watch. I'm looking forward to it. And yeah, we'll see what happens, man. Exciting weekend of college football coming ahead. So thanks for watching, everybody. We'll have a lot more content. We'll actually have a reaction to this as well, especially coming off of that Oregon and Ohio State game. Also, USC Penn State should be very interesting. Like, that was seeming to be a premier matchup, but then USC went and lost to Minnesota. So we'll see how that goes. Anyway, I'll talk to you guys real soon. Bye-bye.